Have you ever met someone who seemed to have it all, but lived with an existential emptiness? Or perhaps you've experienced this yourself: professional success, stability, relationships, and yet a feeling that something essential is missing. It's because we often live outwardly, to please, to meet expectations, to be accepted. But the self is not realized on the surface. It calls from within, and its language is dreams, symbols, and discomforts that we cannot explain. Jung said that symptoms are messengers of the soul: anxiety, depression, internal conflicts. All of these are invitations to dive deeper and discover what has been left behind. Have you ever felt that there is a part of you that hides, even from yourself? Maybe it's that unexpected impulse of anger, that insecurity that paralyzes, or the judgment you cast on others. But deep down, it reveals something you don't want to see in yourself. What if I told you that these hidden parts are not your enemies, but your teachers? Carl Jung, one of the greatest names in psychology of all time, believed that we only reach our true potential when we confront what we deny. And he called this process individuation. In this video, we will delve deeply into Jung's transformative ideas about the self, the unconscious, the shadow, archetypes, and discover how all of this can guide us on the most important journey of all, the journey to become who we truly are. Carl Gustav Jung was born in 1875 in Switzerland, in a small village on the shores of Lake Zurich. From an early age, Jung experienced a childhood marked by vivid dreams, strange visions, and an intense curiosity about the mysteries of the human soul. He said that his greatest teacher was not the university, but the unconscious itself. Jung was a psychiatrist, a brilliant disciple of Sigmund Freud, until his bold ideas put him on a collision course with the master. While Freud saw the unconscious as a box of repressed desires linked to sexuality, Jung viewed the unconscious as a vast and symbolic universe, filled with myths, archetypes, and ancestral wisdom. For Jung, the human being was not just a rational creature with instincts, it was a soul in search of wholeness. The break with Freud was costly. He lost his greatest mentor, faced a period of intense loneliness, and plunged into an internal journey that almost drove him mad. But it was precisely in this abyss that Jung found the foundation of his work. He used to say, "The person who looks outside dreams, the one who looks inside awakens." Jung was not just a scientist of the mind, he was, above all, an explorer of the human soul. He gave psychology a depth that few have dared to reach even today. Instead of reducing the human being to formulas and behaviors, he showed us that there is a meaning behind everything, including suffering. His concepts, such as archetypes, universal images like the hero, the mother, the wise old man, collective unconscious, and ancestral memory shared by all of humanity, the shadow, everything we repress and deny in ourselves, the self, the integrating center of the psyche, our true self, are not just theories. They are keys to a more conscious and meaningful life. And that is why Jung is so often cited by psychologists, philosophers, writers, artists, and spiritual seekers, because he does not invite us to adapt to the world, but rather to know ourselves deeply, so that we can then transform the world from within. Imagine a tree. In the beginning, it is just a seed, but inside it already exists the complete design: trunk, branches, leaves, fruits. It only needs time, light, and nourishment to become what is already in its potential. The same is true for human beings. Each of us has an inner plan, a path to full realization. But often, we spend our entire lives disconnected from this purpose. For Jung, the process of individuation is precisely the blossoming of this essence. Carl Jung said, Individuation is not becoming perfect, but becoming whole. To individuate is to recognize the different parts of ourselves, including those we reject, and integrate them into a broader consciousness. It is to stop living behind masks or personas and to embrace our deepest identity. It is not about following a pre-established path. It is about listening to oneself, accepting your lights and shadows, and walking toward wholeness. In the next part of this video, we will talk about the shadow, this aspect so feared yet essential of the human psyche. You will discover that finding the shadow is the first step to freeing yourself from self-deception and living authentically. But for now, here is the invitation. Close your eyes, take a deep breath, and ask yourself, who am I beyond my masks? In the first part of this video, you began to explore the essence of Carl Jung's work, the quest for wholeness, or as he called it, individuation. Now, let's deepen what this journey of self-discovery means and why it involves courage, awareness, and a loving look at what we hide from ourselves. Imagine you are an actor on a stage. Every day you wear a mask, play social roles, behave according to what others expect of you. At home, you are one person. At work, another. With friends, perhaps yet another. Jung called this mask the persona, the social self that mediates the relationship with the world. The persona is not a mistake. It is necessary. Without it, we wouldn't know how to adapt, coexist, function in society. But here is the danger. When we confuse the persona with who we truly are, we begin to lose contact with our deepest self. Behind the persona is the ego, the center of consciousness, what we believe ourselves to be. The ego constructs our identity, preferences, opinions, and with it, we create a story about who I am. The problem? It's that this story is often limited, partial, based on inherited beliefs, traumas, and conditioning, and even more seriously, the ego tends to exclude everything it considers unacceptable, ugly, or threatening. This is where the shadow is born, a theme we will explore deeply in the next part. If the ego is just a part of the psyche, what is the whole? Jung called the self the regulating and integrating center of the psyche, the totality of our soul, which includes everything: conscious, unconscious, light, shadow, pain, and potential. The self is what you are in essence, before wounds, before masks, before others' expectations. He manifests himself in dreams, intuitions, synchronicities, and the feeling of being in the right place, doing what needs to be done. The self is Jung's ikigai, the meeting point between who you are and what the world needs from you. The journey of individuation is the ego's path toward the self. It is the process of going beyond superficial identifications and integrating all the parts that make you, you. Have you ever had the feeling of living a story that seems universal? As if certain challenges, encounters, and dilemmas were part of a larger script. Carl Jung discovered that we are all born with universal psychic images, which he called archetypes. They live in the collective unconscious, a kind of ancestral memory shared by all human beings. Some important archetypes: the hero, the one who sets out in search of overcoming, faces internal dragons, and returns transformed. The shadow, the repressed side that guards our denied fears and desires, the wise old man, the wise old woman, the deep wisdom that guides the journey. The great mother, acceptance, protection, fertility, but also destruction and possessiveness. The trickster, the chaotic aspect that breaks rules and reveals the unexpected. These archetypes are not fictional characters. They manifest in our dreams, myths, movies, books, and in our own attitudes and relationships. For example, when you feel you need to fight against something within yourself, you are activating the hero archetype. When confronted by parts of yourself that try to deny, it is the shadow speaking. When you meet someone who seems like a master in your life, the wise old man is present. Becoming aware of an archetype is like recognizing that we are not alone in our pain. It is human, collective, millennia old. Although each person's journey is unique, Jung identified 4 major symbolic stages that are usually present in individuation. 1. Encounter with the persona. It is the moment to realize that the mask is not the whole. The crisis can come through an emotional collapse, a radical life change, or a feeling of emptiness. I no longer know who I am. This is the seed of individuation. 2. Confrontation with the shadow. It is the dive into the personal unconscious. It involves revisiting traumas, admitting uncomfortable truths, recognizing denied parts. It is painful, but also liberating. 3. Integration of archetypes and anima, animus, anima, the inner feminine in men, animus, the inner masculine in women. Integrating these internal polarities makes us more complete, balanced, and aware of our relationships with others. 4. Realization of the self. It is the return to the center. It does not mean perfection, but full acceptance. And when we stop living according to external expectations and start living in accordance with our inner truth. The tree that grows to the sky needs to have deep roots in hell. Carl Jung. The journey of individuation is similar to the famous hero's journey used by mythologists and storytellers like Joseph Campbell, deeply influenced by Jung. Think of movies like The Lion King, The Matrix, Harry Potter, Moana, or Star Wars. In all of them, the protagonist lives an ordinary life, is called to an adventure, faces challenges and villains, their shadow, finds mentors, archetypes, dies symbolically, and is reborn, transformed, returns to the world with a new consciousness. This epic storyline is not just fiction. It is the symbolic reflection of our own journey of individuation. You don't need to be a psychologist or therapist to get started. Here are some simple practices that Jung would recommend. Dream journal. Write down your dreams upon waking. They are direct messages from the unconscious. Symbolic self-analysis. Reflect on recurring patterns in your life. What are they trying to teach you? Identify your persona. What roles are you always trying to portray? When do you feel like you're acting? Observe your projections. What bothers you most in others is often a reflection of what you reject in yourself. Read myths, fairy tales, ancient stories. They contain archetypal wisdom hidden in enchanting narratives. The path of individuation requires light, but also darkness. In the next part, we will talk about the shadow, this aspect of the psyche that carries everything we try to hide, forget, or deny. But contrary to what many think, the shadow is not evil. It is just repressed. And Jung said that only those who have the courage to look into their own darkness become enlightened. You have already learned about the pillars of the individuation journey: ego, persona, self, and the archetypes that shape our psyche. But there is a deeper and often frightening territory, a place where we hide what we don't want to see. This place is the home of the shadow. Carl Jung believed that we would only be truly free when we stop running from this part of ourselves. And that is exactly what we are going to explore now. What is the shadow? For Jung, the shadow is everything we reject or deny in ourselves. It is composed of impulses, personality traits, memories, desires, fears, and beliefs that we consider unacceptable, whether due to cultural influence, family, or self-censorship. But here is the most important point. The shadow is not evil. It is repressed. It does include destructive aspects, envy, anger, manipulation, jealousy, pride, but it also holds forgotten virtues such as creativity, courage, daring, spontaneity, and personal power. The shadow is the box of everything you've tried to hide to be accepted. How does the shadow form? Since we are young, we learn what is allowed and what is not allowed. If a boy is sensitive, he might hear, "Don't cry, that's girl stuff." If a girl is aggressive, she might hear, "Be nice, girls don't talk like that." These impulses, emotions, and desires are pushed into the unconscious, creating the content of the shadow. Jung said, "What you deny controls you, what you accept transforms you." The shadow does not disappear. It lives in silence, waiting for a crack to manifest, sometimes in bursts of anger, sabotage, psychosomatic illnesses, or existential crises. How does the shadow appear in daily life? The shadow rarely says hello directly. It usually appears in projections, when we criticize or admire something in others that in fact exists within us. In excessive judgments, when something bothers us too much, there is usually something of ours involved. On self-sabotage, when we repeat patterns of failure even when we desire success. In relationships, when we attract people who reflect our wounds. In dreams, through frightening figures, pursuers, labyrinths, or dark symbols. Simple example, someone who is extremely kind and altruistic may repress their anger and healthy aggression. This repressed energy accumulates until it explodes or manifests as illnesses, sarcasm, or chronic frustration. The shadow is not only individual, it is also collective. Entire societies project their ugly sides onto groups, minorities, or different cultures. This is how prejudices, wars, religious, or ideological violence arise. Jung warned that evil is not only out there, it hides in the shadows of the human unconscious and can only be fought with awareness. Contrary to what many people think, integrating the shadow does not mean giving free rein to the worst in us. It means to look with courage at what has been rejected, understand its origins, embrace it with compassion, and bring to light what was hidden. It's like illuminating a dark basement. The dirt is there, but by turning on the light, we can clean it, organize it, and even discover forgotten treasures. Carl Jung wrote, "One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." Integrating the shadow is an act of spiritual maturity. It is the path to wholeness. You don't need to be a Jungian therapist to start integrating the shadow. Here are some simple and powerful practices. 1. Reflective writing. Set aside time to write about situations that provoked a strong emotional reaction. Ask yourself, what did this awaken in me? Why does this bother me so much? What does this say about me that I would prefer not to know? 2. Dialogue with the shadow. Imagine that the repressed part of you could speak. What would she say? What does she want? What does she fear? This technique can be done through writing or guided meditation. 3. Embrace your contradictions. Acknowledge that you can be kind and at times selfish, loving and impatient, secure and insecure. Wholeness is made up of paradoxes. Denying them traps us. Acceptance frees us. 4. Observe your projections. What bothers you most in others reveals something you have not accepted in yourself. And the opposite is also true. Sometimes we admire in others what we are afraid to admit in ourselves. 5. Jungian therapy or mirror groups. A therapeutic environment can help reveal and integrate shadow contents safely and with support. Instead of trying to cure the shadow, Jung proposed a relationship with it. When you stop running from your pain, it stops screaming. When you recognize your anger, it can become assertiveness. When you embrace your vulnerability, it transforms into empathy. When you embrace your desires, you can channel them creatively. The integrated shadow is a source of psychic energy, authenticity, and magnetism. That's why people who have gone through deep crises but have transformed often have a different sparkle in their eyes. They know who they are because they have walked through their own hells and come back more conscious. A simple practice you can do. In front of the mirror, look into your own eyes. Say out loud, "I see you, I accept you, including what I still don't understand." Take a deep breath and allow feelings to come. Repeat this practice for 7 days and observe what changes. This small symbolic act can open deep doors within your psyche. The shadow is not what you need to fight, it is what you need to embrace consciously. In the next part, we will talk about integrating this journey, how to turn shadow into strength, how to live individuation in practice, and how the self can guide us toward our ikigai. In the front part, we learned about the shadow, that deep territory of the psyche where we hide fears, desires, truths, and forgotten forces. Now, we take a step forward, how to integrate that shadow consciously, how to transform all this into fuel for living with purpose, authenticity, and presence. Carl Jung said that the integrated shadow becomes gold, and it is precisely about that symbolic gold that we will talk about now. What does it mean to integrate? Integrating is not controlling, eliminating, or suppressing. Integrating is recognizing, embracing, understanding, and re-signifying. It's when you realize that your fear of failure is, in fact, love for something important, that your repressed anger is the will to position yourself, that your envy is the desire for a more authentic life. Integrating is reconciling internal polarities without judgment. It is bringing all parts of yourself into one consciousness. For Jung, psychology was much more than a science of the mind. It was a spiritual path back to the soul. And the soul is not realized in perfection, it is realized in integrity. Jung wrote, "Wholeness does not consist in becoming good, it consists in becoming complete." That is why the path to the self requires us to face our shadows, embrace our contradictions, and learn to live with inner truth. The self is more than a psychological concept. It is the source of your deepest identity, the divine spark within you, the self with a capital S. While the ego seeks approval, control, and security, the self seeks truth, integration, and meaning. When we are connected with the self, we feel peace even amidst chaos, clarity even without all the answers, presence even in the midst of pain. It's as if an inner compass begins to guide your decisions. Individuation does not happen on a retreat high up in the mountains. It happens in traffic, in difficult conversations, in mistakes made, in daily decisions. Here are practical ways to live this path. Practice inner listening. Set aside 5 to 10 minutes a day to silence yourself. Close your eyes, breathe, ask yourself, what am I feeling? What am I avoiding to feel? This simple pause creates space for the unconscious to speak. Accept cycles. You won't always be enlightened. Sometimes you'll be tired, confused, directionless, and that's okay. The self also manifests in darkness. Accept your ups and downs as part of the journey. Honor your intuition. The voice of the self isn't always logical. It manifests as a hunch, symbolic image, dream, creative impulse. Learn to trust the subtle signals coming from within. Make conscious decisions. Instead of living on autopilot, ask yourself, does this choice bring me closer to or farther from who I really am? The self does not shout, but it whispers insistently, Many people seek healing as if it were erasing parts of themselves, but true healing, according to Jung, is the encounter with oneself. Anger, sadness, anxiety, impulses all carry a message. For example, do you feel envy towards someone? Instead of blaming yourself, ask, what does that person awaken in me that I would like to live, but I do not allow? By doing this, envy transforms into repressed inspiration, and you regain a part of yourself. No technique will truly be transformative if it is not mediated by love. Yes, love. Love for oneself, even when wounded. Love for the parts you still do not understand. Love for the process of becoming who you are. Jung said, "Where love rules, there is no desire for power, and where power prevails, love is absent." The true alchemy of the soul happens when consciousness finds love. A practical tip for growth is the weekly encounter with the self. Choose a day of the week. Spend 30 minutes in silence with yourself. No phone, no distractions, just you, your journal, your thoughts, and your symbols. Use that time to write, meditate, draw, or simply listen. Ask yourself, what does my soul want to show me today? This ritual encounter can profoundly change your relationship with yourself. The path of individuation is also a path of purpose, because when you integrate the shadow, embrace the unconscious, and connect with the self, you begin to live with meaning. That sense, or purpose, is what the Japanese call ikigai, the reason you wake up every day. And look closely, ikigai is not something you discover. It is something that arises when you align what you love to do with what you are good at doing, with what the world needs, with what can sustain your life. Jung would call this living in communion with the self. In other words, living with soul. You did not come into this world to please, hide, or survive. You came to become who you truly are, whole, imperfect, and awake. You have come this far, and if you have arrived, it is because something inside you recognizes this journey. We talk about Carl Jung and his immense contribution to psychology and self-awareness. We explore individuation as the process of becoming whole. We visit the symbolic world of archetypes, the transformative power of the shadow, and the silent light of the self. And we bring all of this into practical life, into your days, your dilemmas, your choices. Now let us understand why Jung remains more relevant than ever, and why his message is so essential in this century. We live in an era marked by an overload of information, stimuli, polarizations, anxiety, comparisons, and disguised loneliness. Modern humans have technology to communicate with the other side of the world, but many times they cannot listen to their own soul. Jung predicted this. He said, technological civilization can give us comfort, but not meaning. And he warned, the salvation of the world lies in the individual who becomes conscious. Individuation is an antidote to contemporary emptiness. It is the choice to stop running outward and begin to dive inward. Jung was one of the few psychologists who did not separate mind and spirit. He studied alchemy, astrology, Eastern religions, mythology, and symbolism, and believed that the human psyche had roots in the sacred, but he never imposed beliefs. On the contrary, he said, religion begins where fear ends. For Jung, spiritual awakening was not fleeing from reality. It was embracing the totality of human experience, with its pains, doubts, joys, and transcendence. Many people today feel a spiritual calling, but they still carry guilt, fear, or the idea that spirituality demands perfection. Jung freed us from that idea. He taught that the sacred is not only in temples but also in tears and falls. God can be found in dreams, symbols, and synchronicities. The unconscious is a bridge to mystery. The task of each one is not to seek enlightenment outside of oneself, but to make conscious the light that already dwells within. You are not lost, you are returning. If you feel in crisis, if you feel something is deconstructing inside you, no, this is not weakness. This may be your ego opening space for the birth of the self. The pain that bothers you may be the cry of your soul asking to be heard. The emptiness that scares you may be the fertile ground for your ikigai to flourish. This journey, although intimate, is collective. By knowing yourself, you change your life, and by changing your life, you change the world. Here at the Ikigai channel, we believe in the power of self-knowledge as a bridge to a meaningful life. We believe that your purpose is not outside. It is hidden beneath the masks you have been forced to wear. Our videos are invitations for you to awaken your consciousness, reconnect with your essence, and walk with purpose. If this message touched your heart, you are exactly where you should be. Now that you know the path of individuation, we invite you to do 3 things. 1. Write in the comments. Which part of your shadow do you feel you are ready to embrace? That sharing can free you and also inspire others. 2. Watch the video about Viktor Frankl and the meaning of life here on the channel. There, you will understand how to find meaning even in the most difficult moments. 3. Subscribe to the Ikigai channel and activate notifications. We bring deep, symbolic, and transformative videos. Becoming who you are is not a luxury. It is a spiritual necessity. You don't need to fix yourself. You need to remember who you have always been before being hurt, conditioned, or shaped. That memory lives in your dreams, in your intuition, in the parts you haven't yet had the courage to love. This is the path of individuation. This is the call of the self. This is your Ikigai. May you have the courage to look inward. May you accept each part of yourself with love. And may you find in your own darkness the light that the world needs. Namaste. See you in the next video